Hey everyone, it's Jason here. Welcome to the House of Yoga's podcast, A Pathway to Progress. Today is episode 6, Yoga on and off the mat. And joining me today is the awesome Malin Tennant. It's great to be speaking with you today, Malin. Thanks for your time and contributing. It really does mean a lot.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
Thank you. So, yoga on and off the mat and the practice of pratyahara, what a great topic to be exploring, and certainly a life-changing practice and experience, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are not aware, so Pratyahara is one of the 8 limbs from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? So it's the bridge for me between the outer experience and when we switch to go deeper within ourselves.
Absolutely. And we talk about it as, withdrawing from the external influences, which we've got coming at us every day, right? It's, there's a lot coming at us each day. So it's a challenging one, but it's definitely, as I said, it's a life-changing experience.
Yeah, it's we're getting bombarded by mass media, television, radio, video games, or mobile phones, or whatever it is that we have available around us, and it keeps dragging us away from ourselves. It's trying to grab our attention from every angle.
Mm. So how does someone that perhaps has been practicing yoga for some time, and just as much as me, right? As soon as we start putting our hands and feet on the mat and breathing and moving, I guess pratyahara we start tapping into this practice and going within, slowing the mind down, getting focused. How would you, for someone that's, been practicing for some time and they really want to just start exploring pratyahara a little bit more?
Yeah, so when we read the Yoga Sutras, I think like the summary of the limbs can be a little bit overwhelming if we don't get an understanding of what it is that's being said to us or what it is that's being written.
Right.
But if we then change it into something that might be more available to us, it could be that I'm choosing to consciously pay attention to the awareness or to my awareness, and that might be I'm aware of my hands on the mat, my feet on the mat. I'm aware of where I am in the room, or whatever the awareness is that lies below within myself, behind the power of my senses, because the senses is often what is drawing us outside of our own present experience.
Yeah. And so, just that one word, awareness, just changes the game. So like you say, being aware of my hands on the mat, or being aware of stepping my right foot, left foot forwards, reaching my hands up to the ceiling, and beyond, right? We're talking about yoga on and off the mat. So being aware of, what am I thinking about right now? How am I feeling? I think it's yeah, what a powerful practice. And it comes from that place of starting with being aware.
Yeah, absolutely. And being aware of our breath, right? Pratyahara comes as a result of pranayama, which is the limb before. Not that you have to do them in sequence, they happen, but we've just like giving numbers to things, right? But it's a result of pranayama. So it could be the ujjayi breath that we practice when we do our more yang type of yoga. And when our energy moves outward all the time, we get lost in the world. And when we focus our vital energy, when we focus that inwards, it also helps us to better focus the mind.
Yeah, I love that. I remember one of my first ever yoga teach trainings back in, I guess, 2010. We were asked it was quite close to the end of the training. We were asked to just give I think it was a 2-minute presentation on one of the limbs. And I chose pratyahara because it really meant a lot to me. And I really felt that yoga started to really get pretty exciting, and exploring what pratyahara actually felt like as an experience, not conceptually, but as an experience. And actually, I remember speaking about when I was spending time like in the garden, and I felt like that's when I was experiencing pratyahara, where I was just really focused on the moment and being aware of, I don't know, like hands going into the soil, or just having that momentary experience. And I think for me, certainly when I allow myself to be very present, I certainly feel way more calmer and not
Yeah,
reacting to the external world.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can find pratyahara. We don't have to sit down and, do candle gazing meditations or
Yeah.
close our eyes. And, it can happen when we are engulfed in something, when we are truly focused onto something.
Mm,
Everything else can fall to the side. So it doesn't have to
absolutely.
be like what we call the yogic technique or a meditation practice, or we don't have to withdraw ourselves from society. We can find these little moments in everything that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's for me, it's, it's that way of being, right? Or being, just being, and getting a sense of slowing down.
Mm,
And I love that when you say it could be it doesn't have to be, sitting still or taking ourselves out of society, because in reality, we're actually in this, in this sort of busy world. And yeah, I guess it's the practice of slowing down more, being more present in in the mix of, day-to-day life. And yeah, another way that I really tap into it is, just getting out there and going for walks and getting out in nature. I really feel then I'm in the experience of pratyahara. So what about yourself, Malin, in regards to, can you share a little bit around, obviously you've spent hundreds, thousands of hours teaching, but also, as a student being on your mat, where do you feel like, can I ask the question around where do you feel
mm.
you experience pratyahara in your own life?
Well, it's the same as what you just said. When I get to be outside, having a young dog, she's like, she is 8 months, but she doesn't look like a puppy, but she is still a puppy. Um, but to be able to go out with her, like pretty much daily, we go out for a walk. Sometimes, it's an hour, sometimes it's less, depending on, sometimes it's more. And just being with her and the joy that you can see through her and how she experiences every moment, just as it is, that has truly had an impact on the way that I see things. Like you'll tell her off, bless her, if she's done something, but then she loves you even more, or equally as much the next moment, it's
Right.
gone, right? So just that presence, I think it's definitely rubbed off on me the way that she, goes through her day. Um, so being out in nature is definitely one of those times where I feel like really connected to myself and what surrounds me. Gardening is another one of those things where things just disappear, and you just focus on the moment. On my mat is another one, both when I
Absolutely. Yeah.
practice and when I teach. I could be, if you have a little bit of a funk before you go teach, it kind of disappears when you get there and you start to interact with your students. You get to connect to your body, you feel yourself on the mat, you connect to your breath. So all of those things. And that's what's beautiful around it, is that there's no external stuff. It's not like I have to go and buy something or I have to go and do something that takes me out of it. The more simple it is, the more present I feel.
Wow, that's so powerful, right? The more simple it is,
Mm,
the more connection and tapping into
mm,
pratyahara. I feel like, that could be, well, it is a game changer. It's absolutely a game changer. And, for so many people um, who are practicing yoga or, not practicing physical yogas, we've just got into this busy lifestyle, and such, so much energy and attention going on external influences, right? um just bringing it back to basics, how powerful is that? And I guess that's the real power in yoga. And, just putting your hands and feet on the mat, bringing your awareness to your breath, it just starts to slow things down, right? Starts to slow life down. So that's great, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I talk about getting out in nature and spending time in the garden, and definitely, you were just talking about being with your dog. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about, other areas as well. And there's so many moments where it can be experienced, when, being with the kids, or just joyful moments, right? So joy, I see pratyahara being connected to joy and just momentary bliss. We talk about samadhi being the eighth flame, and it's that, right? It's just a beautiful moment, and it can be so simple, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like not everybody, lives in the countryside. They can't, not everybody can go for a walk for, hours in the forest, but you can get that connection. You can have plants that you can sit with plants that surround you. You can have the window open and you can get the connection to nature through that as well. So you don't have to remove yourself completely. Once again, it's like the society that we live in requires most of us to be involved to some extent. But it's that busyness that we often link to how it is to live in society today. If we're not doing one thing, we are thinking about what other things we should be doing, endlessly anticipating what's next, or we're thinking about what we didn't do, and we're not giving our full attention to what it is that we're actually doing. So our life has become this frantic and erratic and fragmented. And I remember Sosha, who also teaches at the House of Yoga, she always said, like, we've forgotten how to be human beings and we are human doings, and that's kind of, that always sits with me as a reminder to be and not keep doing all the time.
It's really powerful. And yeah, so I guess in yoga classes, pratyahara is definitely, it's weaved into teaching, and we talk about drishti, and focusing on one point can have a huge impact on someone's state, right? Just actually walking out of class or walking wherever they are on the mat, and after that experience, feeling better because obviously they've been immersed in breath, but two, just slowing down. We can call it the monkey mind, or just slowing down external distractions. And certainly for me, being on a yoga mat, I always 99.999% feel so much better after practice. And I know that's because of just being immersed in breath and just taking myself out of what needs to be done, or like getting distracted on so many things that you can get distracted on. So I think in the yoga class, when the teacher's speaking to breath and speaking to drishti, and setting your eyes on one point, that is a great access into pratyahara, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also with the you say drishti, we often have like a fixed gaze point, and most traditions say there's 9 focus points in yoga, 9 points of drishti. And the purpose of that is to direct your attention forward, because I know for myself, I've been in studios at the House of Yoga and other places where there's busyness and there's a lot of people, and you find that, like, when your gaze is wandering and you might, oh, what is that person doing, or oh, that person's got nice pants, and like, oh, but what are they doing and why are they doing that? Like, we get pulled out of ourselves when we allow the gaze to wander. And that is what the senses do. You can sit like completely, in your own thought process, in your own mind, and someone walks past you with a freshly brewed cup of coffee, and you smell it and you're like, oh, I need to go and get myself a coffee. Before that, you had no thoughts on getting a coffee, right? So we are constantly being pulled in all of these directions,
yeah,
because of our senses. We like this, we don't like that. Oh, I like the smell of that. Oh, I don't like the smell of that. So it's keeping our drishti, our focus, to these points in our practice allows us then to take that off of the mat. So we're like, okay, I can smell coffee. Well, now my focus is on meditation. Will my coffee help me? Maybe not, right? Or maybe I'm really tired and the coffee will help me to stay awake in my meditation. So it gives us that, discerning mind, that what do I need and what do I not need? What do I need to follow? What do I need to stay away from?
Great. Yeah, very good. And it comes back to just calming the mind, right? And so if you think about when we calm our mind, when we allow ourselves to dissolve distraction, and how many thoughts are we having? We spoke about this a a couple of weeks ago is, how many thoughts is the average person having each day? Between 60 and, what is it, 90,000 thoughts a day. More on the sort of higher number of, feeling stressed or anxious. So the benefits, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, the practice of pratyahara is just immense, right? In regards to benefits where we can do the practice, or do less, and experience more of that calm mind and relaxing the nervous system. So actually the response to any external influence and any negative influence is, I guess, more neutralized, right? So you live more neutrally rather than having being in that reaction of what's happening in the external world. And that has a huge impact on overall health and wellness for sure.
Yeah, and you say that 60 to 90,000 thoughts, and the majority of those are the same thoughts that we had the day before and the day before, right? So it gets a little bit scary when you look at it that way, that we are not really getting anywhere when we feed ourselves the same. And like you say, especially if there are negative thoughts, because the negative thoughts, when we over time, maybe the way that we speak to ourselves, it becomes our reality. Our reality, then it becomes our personality, and before we know it, we're stuck in this personality that is very negative, and our thought patterns just reinforce that behavior.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And for the guys listening, Malin, in regards to where to start, we spoke about just literally getting on a yoga mat and perhaps getting out in nature and being in the garden and just allowing yourself to slow down and experience the moment, and not having to be anywhere else or be anyone else, being okay with the moment. I just want to sort of drop in some little nuggets around, how our listeners can really just tap into more of this. So I wanted to just share around just observing silence, just, giving yourself time to just be in silence. In our teacher trainings, I don't want to share too much because it's a nice surprise in the training, right? But, we definitely explore moments of silence, and actually how can you introduce it more into your life? Because just being aware, like you said, and stopping and pausing and just noticing what's going on around you without having to be involved in it and react to it is a great start for pratyahara.
And that's also the beautiful thing about it. It's like we don't need to get ourselves a yoga mat. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to, enlist in things in order to be more aware. It's something that we can do anytime, anywhere. It's more choice that we are starting to become more aware. Before we are aware, we cannot change anything.
That's it.
Because it's not within our awareness. So the more we can expand our awareness, open our awareness to what is around us, what's going on within us, that in itself is helpful to get to know ourselves better. Because we spend so much time acting from our programmed pattern, what's been added to our personality from a very young age. And if we're not aware of these patterns, we cannot change them. And we keep doing the same thing, behaving in the same way, exploring the same patterns with or without awareness, and we get the same results. So unless we change the patterning, we cannot change the results that we are getting.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if we now we're starting to look at really, making some new pathways and changing things in life. Or perhaps we're actually talking about transformation here, because there's always change happening, right? But actually to really, really experience and create transformation, it comes back to being aware, right? And I feel that's the power of yoga and meditation, is we definitely become, we certainly become more aware of our life and how we're showing up and who we're being in the moment, just literally from introducing yoga and meditation into our life. It's such a game changer. So observing silence, like allowing yourself to be in silence, is a really great practice and great access to pratyahara. Um, Obviously, practicing mindfulness, and there's so many different ways we can do that. Um, what about? I just wanted to bring up, participating in gossip.
Mhm.
Because we can so easily fall down the rabbit hole there, right? Of in our own mind or in communication with someone else. It's just, again, awareness comes into the conversation here, is just noticing when you get caught into that sort of stuff, into, could be just a negative conversation or gossip that really is not needed, and it takes our energy. So I wanted to bring that one into the conversation, and just refraining from that, and just, it's exploring that for sure is another great way to be in the practice of pratyahara. Do you want to speak to anything on that, or maybe anything else that can just give a little nugget to someone listening?
Yeah, like it's interesting that you bring up gossip. It's is actually one of the primal behaviors or instincts that we have as humans. So when you think back of when we were hunter gatherers and we were living freely, or we were wandering around, and then when people started settling, they became this thing. It's like, okay, so this is mine, and we started to like say, this is my field, this is my part of the forest, and we started to separate out land for ourselves. And in order to kind of build a tribe, we needed allegiances. So we needed people to come onto our side. So gossip was born out of a sense of keeping mind together. So I need people on my side, so this person over there is not going to come and take what's mine. So in order to turn people against somebody else, we gossip. So we're like, well, this person and this person did that, you better come to my side, right? So when we think of how old this pattern is, we can see how easy it is for people to get caught up in it. So what we can do when we become aware of this is happening, sometimes we can't remove ourselves from a situation, but what we can have control over is what we add to it. So we don't have to fuel that. So if we're in the workplace, we go to the coffee machine, people are gossiping, we can fill up our cup of coffee and we can go, right? We don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay listen to it. We don't have to add to it. Sometimes we could be in a situation where we can't get anywhere. So then maybe we just choose to, well, I don't have anything to add, this is not a conversation for me. So, I mean, we might not always be able to remove ourselves or stop the conversation from happening, but we always have control over the input that we add.
Wow. Yeah. What a great what a great way to show up, right? And to conserve our energy. You think about how much energy can be wasted in these moments.
Yeah, but you see, like with gossip as well, what magazines do you see? Like there's hundreds of them when you come into the supermarket, and the last thing before you pay, there they are again, just feeding off gossip, right? Because it's feeding off that old instinct, that primal instinct of defending what is ours.
Yeah. So interesting. And I love this conversation. And like always, we could be talking about this for hours, right?
Yeah.
But, coming back to the impact, we talk about yoga on and off the mat, and how, as a daily practice and commitment, just for little moments of the day, and just, I guess, being aware when you're not aware, or being aware when you're fully present and fully in the moment, just compounds into, over time, a whole new life experience. Consider that, right? It's a whole new life experience. And the impact it has, as I was saying earlier, on health and well-being, mind, body, energy, is pretty dramatic over time.
Yeah, what we want to do is, like, we see the situation happen, and we often react to it.
Right.
So there is a preconditioning that causes us to react in a certain way. If we get triggered, right, we act out, or we go inwards and we take it out on ourselves, whatever we are underlying what's operating. But what yoga and pratyahara and pranayama and all the things that we do in our mat, it allows us to shift back to that point where things happen. And instead of reacting, we can have a pause and we can look, and then we can choose a better way to meet that situation. So if you think of like the longer your breath is in a pose, the more movement that you can do within that, you know. So within the practice, the asana that we do, if I can, you know, even out my breath instead of rushing the movement, how much more present do I get? And it's the same off our mat. If I have that awareness of my breath, how much more present can I be with what it is that is showing up and how I react to that?
And then everyone gets to win, right? That you or the person practicing gets to win. Everyone around you gets to win. So it's a win-win scenario. And I guess, you know, so we're learning here. So pratyahara, we're learning to reroute our attention, right, in the moment. So through the practices of being on the mat, breath work, pranayama, you know, turning inward to tune out of the external stimulus. And a lot of it is negative. Let's be honest. A lot of it is negative stimulus. To just, you know, you'll hear me say this so many times, right? So we can get better at, firstly, get better at ourselves. Yeah, through this practice. That's the result, you know, is we start to get better at ourselves in certain moments and more moments. And then when we get better at ourselves, we absolutely get better at life. I've seen it in my own life experience. I felt it in my own experience and so many other people over time, which is magical, isn't it? It's such a brilliant existence. And look, am I saying that there's so many times when I get caught out, I'm like, oh, here we go. I need to tap a bit more into pratyahara here. I mean, why did I just say what I just said? Why am I reacting to that? So it's an ongoing, it's not like it's a done deal and it's, you know, it's finished. The practice is done. It's just a never ending awareness.
Yeah, and I just had a conversation with a client just before our chat, and we were talking about like, okay, so where am I going with this? You know, like when do I get to the end? And we get so fixated on like, oh yes, when I achieve this. But the thing with yoga, with self-inquiry, with personal growth, there is no end. You know, it's the end when we don't return to this planet, right?
That's it.
We don't come back. You know, it doesn't happen to a lot of people. But you know, there is never an end because it just spirals. You know, we get a little bit better at being ourselves every loop that we take, but there's always one event that kicks us a little bit back, but then it spirals back up. You know, and when we remove one trigger, we'll find something else. And that's like the challenge and the beauty of the practice at the same time.
That's it. You know, you can't really expect to do yoga for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Of course, it's going to have, you know, it's life improvement for sure. But yeah, we've got to consider it. So it's a never ending, just long practice, right? Whilst we're here. And yeah, for sure, it's beneficial on so many levels. So that's the pratyahara, you know, that's the conversation we wanted to really speak to today, pratyahara and, you know, yoga on and off the mat. Do we have to be on a yoga mat to experience pratyahara? Absolutely not. There's so many different ways that we've already spoke to earlier on in this conversation. For me, you know, being in the garden, out in nature, having fun, being with the kids, like there's so many ways that we can tap into it. It's endless and it's every day, right? It's a momentary thing. Is there anything else?
If we look at the 8 limbs, there's only one of those that happen on our mat. The rest is off the mat.
That's the beauty of trainings, though, right? You know, when we start, when someone's at that point of exploring and very curious about what's next for me on my yoga journey, and for a lot of people that is jumping into and exploring yoga teacher trainings. It doesn't mean you have to be a yoga teacher for sure. It's all about enhancing your own practice and taking on these practices like pratyahara that we've been speaking about, and obviously so many teachers, as we know, Malin, then go on to teach and share these life-changing tools and skills with so many other people. It is that beautiful ripple effect. So that said, we were obviously talking earlier around, you're leading many trainings for the House of Yoga, which is great. And you've got your Yin training coming up pretty soon with Jeff, right? Yin and Ayurveda, and that definitely links back to this conversation.
Yeah, it does for sure, especially the part of like the human being and not a human doing. Yin is all about doing less, about the simplicity of the practice. In yin, it's like when you hold the poses for 3, 4, 5 minutes, the less you do, the more you benefit from it. When we're trying to force ourselves into a shape or a form, we're causing tension rather than having this passive attention to what it is that we are doing. So yeah, we're super excited to lead another group of yogis into the Adventures of Yin. So we'll start on the 9th of March for a 50-hour Yin Foundations. So mostly directly towards people who haven't done a Yin training prior to that. We go deep into anatomy, the human variation, the skeletal segments, and how this plays a role in both our yin and our yang practice. Our bones don't change, right? We have the same bones, whether we're trying to do, a snail pose or a handstand. And then we have a second 50-hour, which is not the week after, but the week after that, on the 23rd of March, where we focus more on Ayurveda. So much less about the methodology of teaching a yin class and the anatomy, but more of the philosophy, the sister philosophy to yoga, and how we link that back to Ayurveda.
Brilliant. I love it. So thanks for sharing that. So for anyone, listening, firstly, we appreciate you listening. It's wonderful. And we love doing this for you guys. But yeah, if you're interested in exploring and taking your journey of yoga and getting better at life to another level, then you really want to be thinking about these trainings, because they are life-changing. They're amazing, and especially with facilitators like yourself, Malin, and Jeff. But listen, I've really loved this conversation. I think Pratyahara is a game changer for sure. Yeah, Malin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, as always. And for you guys listening, thank you. We will be jumping into episode 7 very shortly and sharing that. But for now, thank you for joining us for episode 6, yoga on and off the mat. And yeah, get practicing some pratyahara. See what the impact is for you guys. Thanks, Malin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.